So, welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. Hi, everybody. Hope everyone's having some nice weather. Today, the February Lunch and Learn will be on how to use technical skills in today's businesses. Just so you know, this event will be recorded, and then afterwards, it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. I would ask if you can, if you're interested, there is a chat function. Can everyone say hi, where you're from, or not where you're from, but your name, class, and major, so we all know who's here. With the webinars, it's a little interesting. We can't just see faces, so and then we can see who we have. And then please, if you have any questions, feel free to submit them using the Q&A. You'll be able to see the questions. Greg and Don will answer as we go through. And this is a conversation, so please feel free to submit them at any time. So with further ado, please welcome our presenters, Don Fendrick, EE89, and Greg Hinchin, EE99, and I'll let them take it away.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sarah. Don, do you want to, I think we're going to kick off with introductions. Was that kind of what we were going to start with?
Yep.
Go ahead and start.
So my name is Greg Hinchin, and I electrical engineer, class 99. And I was asked kind of to talk, this initial conversation kind of started with how do students and other alumni have an opportunity to look at other options that you can do with your engineering degree and becoming a sales engineer or technical sales or that type of application engineer. That started the discussion, which is how we ended up here today. So I, as an electrical engineer, graduated in 99, and I started a career with a company called Johnson Controls, and they're based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so I don't have a ton of history on my career history. I started with the company 20 years ago and really have enjoyed what I've done. And I'm based out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So I spent some time with the company initially doing some training and hands-on application engineering between Milwaukee and Minneapolis. So I spent the better part of a year out there, and then just ended up back in Sioux Falls. So I covered the entire state of South Dakota as part of my territory, and yeah, it's been a really exciting, rewarding career. So that's kind of my history.
Great. So first of all, Sarah, thanks for the opportunity to participate in this webinar. It's great to reconnect with the School of Mines. I grew up in Norfolk, Nebraska. I graduated from the School of Mines as a EE in 89. And from there, I've really kind of been around for a few companies to develop some background. I really partition the background that I've got around build products, build solutions, buy solutions, and then sell solutions. And so after I graduated from the School of Mines, I joined Texas Instruments down in Dallas, Texas, where I helped build products for the Defense Systems and Electronics Group, which is now part of Raytheon. And in that capacity, wrote code, helped train our end customer on how to operate the proof of concept that we were building. And this was a long-term defense contract. So that was especially rewarding because it was building stuff and actually delivering it to the customer and having them operate the proof of concepts. So they could demonstrate that they could make use of that, quite frankly, for national defense, which was pretty rewarding. Then after the experience with Texas Instruments, I joined a company called Alcatel, based out of Paris, France, really a global telecommunications equipment provider company. And with Alcatel, I shifted industries, went over to a communications industry. And in that communications industry, I did a lot of system level testing, and ultimately ended up doing product management. So requirements definition for the products that we were building, and then actually realizing the products that are being built, and then had profit and loss responsibility for products that we were delivering into the marketplace, for customers all around the globe. At that time, it was Sonnet equipment, so it was OC48 or roughly 2.5 gigabit per second data rates, as well as 10 gigabit per second data rates for the communications industry. Those were the predominant products that I was responsible for. So that was a really interesting experience around, just overall build and, build products that end customers can consume. But I shifted to go on to the other side of the table and became a customer. As a customer, I joined a company called Level 3 Communications. It was actually called Kiewit Diversified Group when I joined them. I was one of the first 200 employees to join Kiewit Diversified Group, and that then became known as Level 3 Communications. Level 3 has since been acquired by CenturyLink, and now I understand they're called Lumina. But at that time, this was in the 98 timeframe. I walked into the company, and we basically had a blank sheet of paper with a map of the US and said, okay, so what do we do to establish a network infrastructure across this? And so that was pretty interesting because you started from the ground up. And what I ended up doing is specifying what it is that I needed to buy to actually build that network infrastructure out. So I became the customer, if you will, from my previous role in Alcatel. I then became the customer for Alcatel on the other side of the equation. So that was with Level 3. That's what brought me up to Colorado, which is where I'm currently based in Broomfield, Colorado. And then after Level 3, I joined Lucent, and Lucent was acquired by Alcatel. And in the marketing sense, we called ourselves Alcatel Lucent. And then Alcatel Lucent was acquired by Nokia, which is where I'm at now. So, and I'll get into what I'm doing here. My role currently is the CTO for the AT&T account team with Nokia.
Okay, thank you guys. So one of the questions I have is, so what is a sales engineer and what do you do? Don, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I can go first. And so, Sarah, to be able to answer that question, let me first of all, around the what, let me give you a little bit of background on who Nokia is and who AT&T is, because those are two big companies that I'm associated with. So first of all, a brief background on Nokia. Nokia is a global telecommunications equipment provider. We supply equipment all around the globe for any web scale or communication services provider. We have about 98,000 employees worldwide, about $23 billion worth of revenue. And the kinds of things that we deliver are critical network infrastructure components. You might have heard of Nokia as a handset manufacturer. We no longer do handsets, although we license our brand name out to others that will put our brand name on their handset. But basically everything else that makes up the communications infrastructure for anything dealing with the internet is stuff that we produce. So we have fundamentally three business divisions. One is the mobile networks business division. And in that, we produce all of the radio access network equipment, microwave radio links, all of the network management support around that. So anytime you're on a cell phone, there's a good chance that you're hitting a piece of equipment or piece of software that we provide. We do the network infrastructure as our second business unit. With network infrastructure, all of the IP routing equipment. We produce all of that. We also do all of the optical networking equipment. So DWDM, the old, multiple terabits over a single fiber strand, those kinds of things. We also do fixed network deployments. So passive optical network. So if you hear fiber to your home, all of that equipment is stuff that Nokia produces. As well as DSL, so digital subscriber line equipment that goes over a copper plant. And I guess the other part of network infrastructure is, of course, the submarine business. So we have an entire business line surrounding submarine business. So if there's a cable that goes across the ocean, there's a good chance that that's a cable that Nokia laid or companies that were acquired by Nokia, late Alcatel or what have you. And then the third business division, predominantly within Nokia, is cloud and network services. So we provide cloud equipment, software, all of the application services that support the communications infrastructure, such as voice, voicemail. If you have an iPhone and you see, your list of voicemails, that's software that we produce, that's provided to the communications service providers for doing that. We also do cognitive services, so AI, ML kinds of base services. So those are the three predominant business groups that make up Nokia. The other thing that's of relevance with Nokia is we're the home of Bell Labs, where many innovations have happened over time, many of which I'm sure you've heard of, such as the transistor. We invented the transistor. We invented the laser and fiber optics. We invented satellite communications. We invented Unix, C, C++, and so the list goes on. We've got 9 Nobel Prizes around that. So pretty high-tech company overall, that I represent with Nokia. And then the other company that I'll highlight here in terms of the what is AT&T. So as the CTO for the AT&T account team, AT&T, I'm sure all of you have heard of it. They have about $180 billion worth of revenue annually, about 20+ billion worth of capital spend that they use. And the services that they deliver to their end customers is really around either connection services or entertainment services. Connection services, obviously, the mobile network. For those that aren't in the wireline footprint, there's 22 states in the US that they have wireline footprint that they deliver services, broadband services to the home. And of course, they do all of this for enterprise users as well. And then their entertainment services, they own Warner Media. And so brand names like HBO and CNN are all owned and operated by AT&T. And so it's a pretty sizable business overall for them. So what I do then in that context is I'm the chief technology officer for the AT&T account team. We capture about 10% of what that capital expense budget is for AT&T. So we supply them with a very wide variety of communications equipment and software across their entire network infrastructure. We're one of their largest, if not the largest, supplier into them. And in that vein, my role and responsibility is to interface with them on what their problem statements are, what kinds of business problems they've got, whether that's associated with cost conservation or revenue generation, and then evangelize technical solutions that will help them solve those problems kind of across the board. So I interface with their CXO level, so their CTOs that they have for their network business, and all of the officers that they have in the company to understand what that problem statement is, and then communicate solutions back into them. I also interface internally within Nokia to make sure that those problem statements are well understood, and so that we can create the right kinds of portfolio solutions for those problems to be solved. So evangelizing what this technical vision is kind of across the board is essentially what I do in this kind of a capacity. So Greg, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, so that it sounds like we both work for big companies, which is interesting, but that's just where our role ended up with. So Johnson Controls, 125 plus years, based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Warren S. Johnson was actually a college professor that developed the first thermostat. So that's how the company started. I mean, it's a kind of an interesting history. And there's been a ton of changes, of course, in that technology. Originally, there was a lot of electronics and everything. Eventually went to what they had, pneumatic controls. If you think of everything was driven by air and different pressures. in the 70s, 80s, all the way through today. Everything's gone digital and electronic to the point where now everything's run across, cell phones and having mobile access and everything else. And so the company itself, Johnson Controls, the controls division, the names in the title of the company, they do a lot more things that I'm not extremely involved in on a day-to-day basis. I focus on the controls division. We bought York International about 10 years ago, so we actually got into the actual air conditioning business. And then about 5 years ago, we acquired a company called Tyco that had a rather large fire and security business, both fire detection and fire suppression. So of all of that thing, of the 100,000+ employees, a majority of my focus is just on the controls piece of it. So my day-to-day responsibilities, I work with building owners across the state of South Dakota. I work with consulting engineers that are designing construction and remodel and building projects. And I also work with mechanical contractors that would be installing the HVAC equipment that we control. So it's ironic that as an electrical engineer with the electronics, I'm running mechanical equipment and working with mechanical engineers. But the day-to-day things that I'm going to be doing are, if a new project's being done, I'm going to be putting together a technical proposal on how we're going to control that building, looking at the different components on how the building's going to operate, being able to look at how, comfort and energy usage. I mean, the primary system, the primary controls in the commercial building are used for the two main functions of controlling your energy usage and providing comfort, so that you're meeting, building design standards by bringing in plenty of outside air and regulating the conditions of the facility to meet, building codes, but do it in an energy efficient manner that, doesn't waste a lot of energy and is as efficient as possible. So, and I get the proposals put together. I bid projects, I develop projects, and once the project started, then my installation and construction team actually execute the work. So I'm not operating construction projects on a day-to-day business. I'm doing all the front end estimating and sales support. So it's an interesting job. Every day is different. It's a game. I mean, you're constantly playing a game on how you're going to solve the next problem, whether it's a building issue that somebody's having, whether it's a budget problem somebody's having, applying the product and services that my company makes, and also looking at other companies. I mean, there's other solutions that we don't necessarily manufacture that we may bring to the table, and figure out a way to apply that for one of our customers to provide a solution. So it's, when you build a new building, when you're building or doing a project, there's the bricks and mortar components of a building that get built, get put in place, and generally the construction team walks away once it's completed. And then there's the systems within the building that are going to be there for the life of the building that the owner's got to use every day. So that's one of the things that, once we start a project, we're involved with it generally for the rest of that building's life. I mean, there's always some need, some change, some addition. I mean, that's an active piece of operating a building is the system within it. So, but it's a fun industry. It's a neat industry, and I've definitely enjoyed it.
Thanks, Greg and Don. Okay, so next question. How did you know that you wanted to get into How did you know that you wanted to get in a technical sales role? Greg, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I don't know. I've always liked, so a couple things. I decided when I wanted to go to the School of Mines that it's a technical school. I thought engineering sounded like a really fun career path. The business and sales aspect of it hadn't necessarily occurred to me when I started that journey to become an electrical engineer. And it was probably my junior year, I was having a conversation with my dad, and I said, you know what? I'm looking at some other friends of ours that are going into business, and I want to get into the business aspect of a career. I don't necessarily want to be a design engineer of some sort. And my dad kind of looked at me and said, well, there's a lot of people that go to business school, but there's not a lot of people in business with an engineering degree, and it was outstanding advice. I mean, it was using the education that I got as a stepping stone to do something a little different. And so that seed was kind of planted into my head of doing something a little different. And then at some point, I'd talked to several alumni from the School of Mines, and a lot of them had gone into either some type of management or technical sales. And I became really curious and started doing a lot more research, and actually started to talk to several other alumni about that. And that was the the light bulb turned on. That was the point where I said, that sounds like a very interesting career path, where you're applying, using your technical skills and technical education to apply products to either finding solutions, or in this case finding solutions and selling them. I was the past president of the South Dakota Mines Alumni Association, and the reason I continued to get involved with our alumni association was, for me, that connection to other alumni, especially that went down the sales engineering career path, is what led me to where I got to today. I mean, it absolutely, I never would have probably thought about going down that path if I hadn't had a mentor, so to speak, to show me that. So, but it was absolutely the right decision for me. I mean, even my junior and senior year, there was a couple electrical engineering professors that just said, you should look into technical sales. That would probably be a really great fit for you to go into that field. So I would definitely, I think just being able to connect with people, to work with people, to be solving different problems every day, those were all things that definitely appealed to me. So I think that's how I connected with that. So
Cool.
Don?
Yeah. So why did I get into this? I'll tell you that when I was in school, there was zero chance I was going to be interested in going into sales. I was like, those guys are just, I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, all they do is go out and play golf and, buy lunch. They just talk a lot. I was like, there is zero chance. And so when I was coming out of school, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go build some stuff. I want to get into design. I want to actually, build real things. And so that's, and Texas Instruments was great for me to march down that path of, writing some code, building stuff and so forth. But the thing that hit me right out of school, and in particular in that first job, was, it turns out that if you want a paycheck, you have to actually sell the stuff that you build to a customer. And so you're interfacing with the customer all the time, and they're telling you, hey, this is what you need to build. And so you're reacting to what it is that other people want, which is great, because then you have the latitude of figuring out how you're going to build it yourself, and so forth. But at the end of the day, you're not really driving, right? You're reacting. You can try to drive. You create something, and then you try to go out and find a customer base for that. But what I found over time, and as I went into like a product management role and now into a sales role, is that at the end of the day, the thing that's going to drive the companies is the sales organization, because the sales team, it turns out, they don't just go out and play golf and buy lunches. That's like a fringe benefit of being in sales. But at the end of the day, I find that the sales team is incredibly technical. Nearly everybody around me has an engineering degree, quite frankly. And the things that we're doing as part of this organization, and in particular in my role as part of technical sales, is defining what those requirements are for what the research and development team is actually needing to build. And so if you're going to drive how the company is performing and what the company builds, and shaping what the company actually does, to me, this is the spot in the organization that really defines that. Like I say, when I came out of school, there was like zero chance I was interested in doing this. But now that I've built up a bit of work experience over time, been in that research and development role, been in a product management role, and now into a sales role, it's clear to me that this is the most interesting, not only because you're interfacing with the customers and defining what it is that we're actually going to build, defining what it is that the customer is willing to buy so that we can build it, but you also get the breadth of understanding. As I was describing Nokia in a nutshell across all of the business divisions and so forth, it's like if you're in that business division and doing research and development for that business division, you're fairly focused on a specific problem or a particular set of solutions. Whereas in this kind of a capacity in a sales role, I see the breadth of opportunities that are out there that you can do so many different things. And the places that this kind of a sales role has taken me has been shocking, quite frankly, around, the breadth of things. I mean, as I interface with AT&T, it's not just, well, here's this problem and let's go figure out a solution. It's, what's the surround? So for example, in this capacity, I've had the opportunity to lead an incubator for startup companies. So I had 20 startup companies in an incubator, and we're working with them on what kinds of solutions they're developing, what new innovations they're developing, all of those kinds of things. I'm interfacing with Nokia Growth Partners, which is a venture capital arm of the company that does investments into startup companies. So you have to have the technical acumen and the technical currency. So you always have to stay current with whatever's happening across the industry, so you can have those intelligent conversations back with your customer about what those new opportunities are. So it's the breadth of the exposure that you've got across the industry. It's marrying up your technical acumen or technical aptitude with the business acumen that you've developed over time, and bringing those worlds together that really gets it exciting for me as to why I think technical sales is such an interesting career opportunity.
Yeah, I would 100%, that you nailed it on the head with, you're at the front, you're leading the charge, whether it's, new projects or new customers, you're making that connection for your business. And it can be a ton of work. I mean, it's definitely a roller coaster ride. I mean, there's some days, I mean, you've got to be creative in coming up with new ways, new innovations, new ways to win. Yeah, you do get to go to, out to dinner and play golf and have fun with customers too. But you also, there's a reason you go do that kind of stuff. At least, for my job, those things do happen, and that is part of being in sales. But you're also, like I said, you're trying to solve a lot of problems for your customers and generally for the company you work for, and you got to be creative to do those things. But yeah, I wouldn't have been doing it for this long if it wasn't rewarding. I mean, it's a neat career path.
Yeah, it's constantly challenging. I never do the same thing one day to the next. I mean, every day is different. It's fantastic, the kind of variety that you get. I mean, this is a really interesting career path for me.
We did have one question before I jump into the next one. Tyler Arts asks, after you transitioned into the sales position, did you go through any additional education to expand your knowledge in a different industry other than engineering?
I don't have, I jumped right into sales. So my company specifically hired a salesperson with an engineering degree. So, I mean, I jumped right into it. I didn't have, I didn't go out and do a couple things before I decided to jump into sales. I jumped right into it, and the company gave me the education and tools I needed to be successful. So, I mean, good, bad, or otherwise, my story's pretty short there, Don. I don't know if you went and got an additional degree or anything afterwards.
I'll tell you, most of it has happened on the job. I've seriously considered going back for formal formal training, like getting an MBA, for example. I've considered that many, many times. But over time, as I talk to my mentors in the industry, it just depends upon where you're at and what your goals are. Like it's like, when I was in product management, one of the things you had to understand was net present value, which is clearly a foundational capability of somebody that does gets an MBA. You need to understand the time value of money and so forth. And so uh, those kinds of kind of business acumen capabilities, I just needed to go learn that on my own, or through others, or through other whatever means there was available to me. Certainly continuing on a formal education and getting an MBA or getting a master's or what have you, those are always options. It didn't make sense for me, just given the career path that I've taken. Now, I will say that the other aspect of um, the business environment is more than just technical. It's understanding who you are as a person, and how you develop those relationships, and what you stand for and what you don't, and those kinds of things. And I will say that one of the most rewarding training exercises that I've been through was a corporate program. They called it the Corporate Core Program. It was a long training program that involved 3 separate weeks. One week was here in the U.S., and we did a number of exercises. You interface with the human resources folks, which quite frankly are psychologists that really get to the heart of how you think and how you act and react, and so forth, and so you can fine tune some of your skills. So for example, one of the things that they gave us as a exercise was, okay, so here's a hypothetical situation. You're an executive that needs to process all of these emails. Here's the organizational structure. Here's the priorities of the company. Um, so do as much as you can inside of 30 minutes, because the reality is that's all the time you're really going to have in that kind of an environment. And it turns out that they were right. And so it was like, okay, go. And they determine whether or not you're able to actually process a large amount of information in a short period of time and prioritize accordingly. That was like, an example of what happened in the first week. And then the subsequent 2 weeks, they actually sent us over to France. This is when I was part of Alcatel, and then ultimately Alcatel-Lucent. They sent us over to France, and we we were basically sequestered for a week at a time, and they brought in external educators to talk about talk about a number of different things, and run us through a number of exercises around who we are as a person, who we are as a leader, those kinds of things. So by way of example, one of the first questions that they asked us at the beginning of the week, just to kick things off, was, and they actually asked this question. They said, "What is the meaning of your life?" Um, and I've never had anybody ask that question of me, but it it turns out they were actually serious about it. They were serious about asking that question. They really wanted an answer. They say, "You don't need to answer right now, but we want you to answer at some point during this week, and really contemplate that and think about it." And the other question they asked was, if you're a leader, why would anybody follow you? You know, it's also an interesting question. You really need to think about pretty deeply and understand. So what is it that motivates people? What is it that makes people go around? And how what's your purpose in all of this? And it's about life, and it's about the corporation, and how you interface in a business environment. And so I would say, Tyler, it's a great question, because I think it's an important one. That it's not just about extending your engineering discipline and extending your technical aptitude over time. Obviously, that is very important. And the way that you do that is through technical currency. And as I mentioned, the ways that I've been able to do that is, by understanding the surroundings, in particular around the startup community, at least in the role that I'm in. But it's also about business acumen and extending that. And it's about, your professional development of you as a person. And I think all of those things kind of come together as you're developing relationships in a sales capacity, because the first requirement of a technical sales engineer or a salesperson is relationship development. And so that's top of mind, and that's the first thing that needs to happen. So extending education, I would highly encourage, education across the portfolio, not just not just technical, not just business, but rather, round it all out. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that, Don. I mean, it's one thing to say go get an MBA where you formally go get it. It's another thing to take additional classes, or even like a Dale Carnegie course and some of those things where you just, relationship driven education, helping to come up with better ways. I mean, I've taken several development classes on how to solve problems, how to identify issues, and how to, work through those problems and help problem solve with your customers. Those type of things are huge. And from my experience, if somebody within an organization needs one of those degrees, the company's going to help you get it. So if you're trying to open that door within an organization that requires the degree, there would be some benefit, on your own to go get that degree. Once you're within the organization, if they feel that you need that degree or experience, they'll help you get it. So.
Okay, last question I have, and then if anyone has questions, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A box. So how did the School of Mines help get you and prepare you to where you were to where you're at today?
Yep. You want me to go first?
Don, go.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. I'll tell you, and in our preparation, I was commenting to Greg about this as well, that coming out of school, I felt as if I was head and shoulders above others that had just come out of school from other universities across the country. And I think there's a couple reasons that I think that happened. One is that the School of Mines helped me understand the theory, but then they applied it to reality. And so as much as I didn't appreciate it at the time, when we were solving, like power transmission problems for, the professor's ranch, and figuring out how long of a, how long he could extend his power line to, to heat, the water bin at the far end of his property or whatever. I mean, it was like, this is kind of painful, but what it did was it grounded that education, grounded that theory into reality. And I think that was a theme across my experience at the School of Mines. And whether it was the professors that were driving that to drive it down into reality, or at least when I was attending school there, we had a fairly sizable population of folks that were non-traditional, those that didn't come right from high school into college, but rather went from high school, tried a career or did other things, and then they came back to school. And those folks really helped drive that reality, that sense of reality. And I think if you look at the statistics, at least at the time when we looked at the statistics of non-traditional student population, the School of Mines had a very high number of non-traditional students that were there. And that really changed the educational experience for me. It changed it in a very, very positive way, because it made it much more real than any place else. So I think that was, the grounding in reality was one big area that helped me from the School of Mines. I'll say the other thing that helped me, and as I mentioned before, coming out of school, that sales was like the least interesting thing to me. And I'll tell you part of the reason that was the least interesting thing is because I took a business management class in my senior year. And that business management class took me so far out of my comfort zone. I mean, it wasn't even funny. I mean, I was like, I hate this class. But at the end of the day, and today, when I look back at my School of Mines experience and education, that was one of the most relevant classes for me in actual career and career growth opportunities and so forth. So taking me out of my comfort zone and grounding me in reality, I you know, hands down, I mean, School of Mines was a fantastic foundation on which to build.
So, yeah, I was thinking, I put some thought into this, just trying to come up with how I would really describe what, the foundation that Mines gave me. Um, and everybody asked me, if you go to school there, what do you get out of there? What's an engineer do? And I'm not sure I can completely answer that still, but um, a couple of the key words that come to my mind is a world-class problem solver. Like, I feel that the education I received at Mines, it really it pushes your limits on how you're going to solve a problem. And along with that is being able to work with your fellow students and becoming, having the teamwork to get something done. And I think back to some of the tenacity that you have on some of those late nights where you're, plugging through senior design or plugging through just even some of the homework problems that you had. I mean, you really learn to power through, solve these problems, find out what resources you need to solve it. And when you get out into the business world, um, people tend to thrive from our organization. I mean, our alumni tend to do very well because they've got those skills, and you're not going to give up. You're going to solve a problem. You're going to look for a different path, and you're going to get things done. And to take that to the next step and take that into a technical sales role, it's huge. I mean, people I know when I look at my core group of friends that are alumni from Mines, they're all in some type of sales, application, engineering, management type roles, kind of different than the traditional, what I would think would be a traditional just engineer when it comes out of the organization. And for all the reasons I just mentioned, I mean, they got into an organization, and those skills really truly gave them an opportunity to thrive. And when I look back too, I felt like all the technical communication courses, TechCom 1, TechCom 2, those type of courses, I thought were outstanding for an engineering school. I mean, they were geared towards technical presentations and communications. And I just thought, when I came out of School of Mines, I walked in and I had 30 other salespeople from all over the country, and they fly me into Milwaukee for a month of training, and they hand you a piece of a PowerPoint presentation and say, here, you're going to present on this in 10 minutes, knock yourself out. And I thought that I a lot of the people that were there were not even close to being prepared to present that to a group of 50 or 100 people in person. And I felt that Mines, I mean, they put you out there, and when you have to do some of those presentations and put together some of those projects and present them to people and put together the PowerPoint presentations and prove what you're talking about, those have definitely helped me be successful in my industry. So, yeah, it's a great foundation.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on those points for sure. You're right. Yeah, the liberal arts aspects, if you will, of the degree were fine-tuned towards technical communication, and it really, really helped narrow that down to say you need to be able to concisely communicate the salient points of the solution, in a limited amount of time, right?
Correct.
And it needs to be, really clear. And the reality in the business world is you've got 2 minutes to communicate what that idea is. And I thought I completely agree with you. The liberal arts aspects of the degree that you get from the School of Mines, you can't discount that. I mean, coming out of high school and going into college, I was thinking engineering. I'm all into the science and math aspects of this, but it turns out, that you're absolutely right. That is a key component of being able to be successful in the business. No doubt about it.
Right. Yeah, no, they've it's been fine-tuned for people that technically minded, and it was great.
Yeah. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as you were describing that, I was thinking about just tenacity uh, overall, right? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the School of Mines is not easy. I mean, it's a difficult school, right?
Yes,
And if you're going to get through the School of Mines and you're going to get a degree from the School of Mines, it means something when you're done, right? That it's not just it really means something because it means that you really put your heart into it and you're
right.
willing to drive after it. And that kind of a skill set is absolutely necessary in a sales capacity. No doubt.
I would agree.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so far we've had a couple more questions. Chuck wants to know, how much do you think that your personality plays into your career choice?
100%, Chuck.
It does.
Um, yeah, there's 100%. I mean, if personality definitely drives, I think, your ability to get along with people and listen, being able to have the personality to listen to other problems. And um, it's just interesting over the course of my career to see different people end up in different positions, and how I think the personality definitely drove it. I mean, it's everybody's. Some people are natural born leaders and can get a hold of a group of people and put together a team and drive forward, and other people can just be incredibly polarizing from day one, and nobody wants to work with them. So I mean, it's personality driven. So I would say wildly important. How's that?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I'll also say that emotional intelligence plays a key role in this, right? So it's your personality and it's your ability to manage your emotions in in both in times of excitement and in times of despair. You know, the ability to adapt to change. I All of that I think plays a very key role in all of this. But if you don't like people, I mean, if you really hate people, sales is probably not for you. I mean, but if you like, if you like relationships and if you like talking and laughing and and having a good time with others, then it's a pretty good choice.
Correct. Yep.
So that kind of leads into Matt's question, which is, you mentioned relationship building and leadership as important skills to have as a professional in technical sales. But what other skills are imperative to have in this role or have helped you become successful? And how would you recommend students gaining and honing in on these skills?
I mean, I think just getting involved in organizations on campus is key. So if you're, I mean, that's part of it. Like if you're involved with different organizations across campus, you're gonna have to learn to work with other people. You're gonna have to learn to be flexible. You can learn to be a leader within those organizations. And those are all, I think, skills that definitely can help. I mean, listening seems to be a almost an art form that's almost lost. It seems like sometimes in the business community anymore, where um, you take a step back and let everybody throw their opinions out there and then come up with a solution. I mean, and so um, yeah, I think involvement in organizations. I mean, within that, there's networking, there's team building, there's all of that. So
Yeah, I agree. By the way, I completely agree on the listening comment. People, you find that people that are not successful are the ones that don't listen. I
right,
mean, you really need to listen, and especially listen to the customer, but listen to all of the feedback that you're getting from around you. The other thing that I'll add to this, I guess, is diversity. And Greg, you hit on this a little bit. When I think about it, I'm thinking about, yeah, as you mentioned, involvement in other organizations, and that continues throughout life. Like, so for example, I've been on the board of directors for our men's golf club, and I'm on the board of directors for our HOA for for a mountain community. And I tell you what, in both of those cases, you learn different skills that you wouldn't normally get through just like a family surrounding or in a work environment, you run into different personalities. Like for example, when I was the president of the board for the men's golf group, there was a guy that was a former NFL player that played in our golf league, and it turned out he cheated all the time. It's like, and he would cheat and he would complain about it, and he'd be like, because it turns out you can adjust the handicap based upon reality as opposed to just what people actually score, because it turns out that some people actually sandbag in golf and they increase their handicap so that when they're actually betting for money, they can do things. And so
I don't have
dealing
that
with
problem. I always have the high score. Anyway,
yeah, mine's pretty high too. But I guess the point is, dealing with other personalities and having that diversity of having to work out things that you wouldn't normally expect. I think that's a great skill set to develop, and you don't develop that just by staying on the straight and narrow. You have to branch out. You have to get outside of that comfort zone to be able to develop those skills.
right.
Great question.
Absolutely.
Any other questions that it's open?
I'll make a comment too. I get asked all the time, should I go out and do what you would, consider a traditional engineering job before I try to get into sales or something else? And my answer is always no. I mean, if you're interested, apply for the positions and let the employers make those decisions. They'll teach you what you need to know. I mean, if you get their attention and you've got the skills they think that can lead to you being successful, they'll hire you for those skills. And that don't sit back and just wait for it. I was lucky enough, so I grew up in Yankton, and I spent 2 summers working for Northwestern Energy there as an intern. And the local manager, I mean, there's quite a few Mines alumni that worked there, but the local manager at the time asked me, "What do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I didn't have an answer at that time. I said, I want to do. I was kind of going down the business and sales route, but not fully vested in that point. He said, "Well, then I'm going to put you pretty much with every department within the organization over the next summer." So I worked with engineering. They had me climb light poles and change street lights if I needed to, just to get an idea what it was like. I mean, just to work on some residential and light commercial equipment. At that time, they had a heating and cooling division, so they were replacing mechanical equipment. They did lighting retrofits where they'd go change all the lights out in the school one summer. So they had me doing just about everything, and even out doing surveys, going out and then inspecting equipment and stuff. Here's a truck and a map, and go out and check out these 20 locations and report on what you find. I mean, it just was eye-opening just to see all the things that were happening in the field, and they had a sales team too. So I spent a week with the sales team, and we did go golfing. So I'm not gonna lie, but it was eye-opening to see all that. And getting a summer position where potentially you could maybe be an application engineer with a company, where you're looking at projects and applying their product to a solution, that's a huge first step into saying, yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, you're not designing the product, you're designing the solutions using the product. So not a bad thing to look at.
Agree with that.
Okay, well, we're getting close to the end of the hour. Let me see if any questions. So thank you. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to add them in. But thank you, Greg and Don, for today. And hopefully everyone enjoyed the talk also. I'm going to drop a survey in the comment section. So your feedback is appreciated. And I'll share that with the panelists. And then if you have any ideas for topics for other webinars, please feel free to fill that out in the survey. And then I want to give a shameless plug to other events that are going on this next month, because we know February is almost over with. There's 3 of them. So we are doing March 4th, we have our mechanical engineering department update for those of you who are interested in that. And then we are doing a virtual wine tasting with Prairie Berry. So that's over Zoom. So that should be pretty interesting to see. And then we are doing the next digital lunch and learn is called Startup U, how a small STEM school is fueling the entrepreneurial boom in the Black Hills. And that's put on by our Office of Engagement, which is a new office on campus. So we have some really fun, exciting things coming up. So again, thank you. We really appreciate it. Don, Greg, anything before we send them on their way?
Go Hard Rockers. That's all I can say.
Yeah, go Hard
Great.
Rockers. And thanks so much for the opportunity. And
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
this has been
Thank
fun.
you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.